Kneel, human, the alien empress ordered. The whole court heard what he said back. What could make a powerful empress give such a command? And what could a human possibly say in response that the entire court would hear? Hello, and welcome to the channel. If you enjoy cinematic science fiction stories filled with mystery, emotion, and unexpected twists, you are in the right place. Please subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss a new story. Thank you for watching, supporting the channel, and joining us for another journey beyond the stars. Before we begin, tell us where in the world you are watching from, and what time is it for you right now. We would love to know where this story finds you today. Get comfortable, turn up the volume, and prepare yourself for a moment where one command meets one unforgettable answer. Chung ta bat dau cu chuyen. If you want me to kneel, Your Majesty, you will have to give me a reason worth standing for. The words left Michael Carter's mouth before he could reconsider them. The throne hall went completely silent. Cold blue light spilled from the crystalline ceiling, sliding across the polished black floor and catching on hundreds of silver ornaments worn by the imperial court. Somewhere beneath the marble platform, ancient machinery hummed with a slow mechanical rhythm. Michael stood alone at the center of the chamber. White human skin, short brown hair, dark formal uniform, no family crest, no royal insignia. Just a simple identification badge from Earth and the posture of a man who had learned not to waste movement. Above him, Empress Serafina Vera sat beneath a vast arch of translucent crystal. Her sapphire skin shimmered beneath the palace lights. Long silver hair fell over one shoulder. Her golden eyes remained fixed on Michael. She had commanded thousands of officers, negotiated with hostile worlds, and ended arguments with a single glance. Nobody spoke to her this way. Not in public. Not ever. One court official slowly lowered his ceremonial tablet. Another looked toward the floor. Michael could hear the faint click of the palace ventilation system. He could hear his own breathing. He could even hear the soft electrical hum of the throne behind the Empress. Serafina leaned forward slightly. What did you say, human? Michael swallowed once. I said I would rather understand why I should kneel before I do it. A nobleman near the front gave a quiet, disbelieving laugh. You dare question the Empress? Michael looked at him. I questioned the order. That is the same thing. No, his answer was calm. It is not. The laughter disappeared. Serafina lifted one hand. The court fell silent immediately. Her expression was impossible to read. Michael Carter, she said. You entered my court 3 days ago under diplomatic protection. Yes, Your Majesty. You were granted the privilege of standing in my presence. Yes. And now you refuse to kneel. Michael glanced briefly at the enormous throne behind her. I refuse to pretend. Something changed in her eyes. Not anger. Curiosity. She rose slowly. The silver fabric of her imperial robe whispered across the crystal steps as she descended. The entire court watched. Michael remained still. She stopped several feet away. She was taller than he expected, but it was not her height that made the room feel smaller. It was the certainty with which she carried herself. Do you believe kneeling has no meaning? She asked. No. I believe it has too much meaning to be ordered casually. Serafina studied him. You speak as though you know our traditions. I know what traditions become when nobody remembers why they existed. A few nobles shifted uneasily. The Empress's golden eyes narrowed. And what do you think this one means? Michael looked around the hall. Hundreds of faces stared back at him. Some curious, some offended, some waiting for him to fail. He answered quietly. I think you want to know whether I respect you. Serafina said nothing. And if that is the question, Michael continued, then you should ask me. For several seconds, the Empress simply watched him. Then she turned toward the court. Did you hear that? No one answered. Serafina looked back at Michael. A faint, almost invisible smile touched her face. Yes, she said. I did. Then the great doors of the throne hall opened. A royal messenger hurried inside, carrying a sealed black document. He stopped several yards from the throne and bowed deeply. Your Majesty, he said, his voice trembling. The Imperial Council has requested an emergency hearing. Serafina took the document. Her expression changed when she saw the seal. Michael noticed immediately. What is it? He asked. She looked at him. They want you removed from my court. Michael exhaled slowly. That was fast. Serafina's gaze remained on him. No, human. She broke the seal. They were waiting for this. The black seal cracked softly between the Empress's fingers. Michael Carter watched her eyes move across the document, line by line. The cold light above the throne seemed to dim as Serafina read. "They have requested an emergency hearing," she said. "And?" Michael asked. "They claim your refusal to kneel was an insult to the imperial crown." Michael looked toward the court. "That sounds convenient." Serafina folded the document once. "They also claim your presence creates diplomatic instability." "That sounds even more convenient." A few nobles exchanged glances. Michael noticed that none of them looked surprised. The request had been expected. That mattered more than the accusation itself. Serafina returned to her throne, but she did not sit. "You understand what happens now?" she asked. "They put me on trial?" "Not exactly." "Then what?" "They put my judgment on trial." Michael considered that. "Because I did not kneel. Because you made me question why I asked you to." Her words were quiet. Michael looked toward the enormous doors at the far end of the chamber. Beyond them waited the Imperial Council, the oldest political body in the empire. Its members had advised generations of rulers. They were not soldiers. They did not need to be. Their influence lived in laws, traditions, appointments, and ancient agreements. "How many?" Michael asked. 9 counselors." "And how many support this hearing?" "All 9." Michael nodded slowly. "Then they planned it." Serafina looked at him. "You think so?" "People do not become unanimous that quickly unless they have already agreed on the question." The Empress was silent. Then she walked down from the throne again. "Come with me." Michael followed her through a side passage behind the imperial chamber. The walls here were older, built from pale stone instead of crystal. Thin lines of gold circuitry ran beneath the surface, glowing faintly every few feet. "Where are we going?" he asked. "The Hall of Oaths." "Why?" "Because the council cannot remove you there." Michael looked at her. "Why not?" Serafina stopped beside a narrow door. "Because the Hall of Oaths predates the council." The door opened with a soft mechanical tone. Inside was a circular chamber with no throne, no elevated platform, and no ceremonial banners. 9 empty chairs surrounded a simple table. In the center stood a transparent pillar containing hundreds of glowing records. Michael walked closer. "What is this?" "Every major oath sworn before the imperial crown for the last 600 years. And mine." Serafina shook her head. "You have not sworn one." Michael looked at her. "Then why bring me here?" "Because I want you to see something." She activated the central pillar. A record appeared. It showed an ancient empress standing before the same chamber. Her voice echoed softly through the room. "The ritual of kneeling is not an act of submission. It is an act of voluntary allegiance. No citizen, diplomat, or protected guest may be compelled to perform it." Michael stared at the record. "Then why did you order me to kneel?" Serafina did not answer immediately. "Because I was taught that every person entering the imperial court must kneel. That is not what the law says." "I know." Michael looked at her. "Since when?" "Since you refused." Her answer was almost a whisper. He studied her expression. The Empress looked less like a ruler now and more like someone who had just discovered that part of her own world had been hidden from her. "They knew," Michael said. Serafina nodded. "The council has known for generations." "And nobody challenged them?" "Not publicly." Michael looked at the glowing record. "Then this was never about me." Serafina's golden eyes met his. "No," she paused. "It was about whether I would question them." A soft chime came from the chamber entrance. A royal attendant stood there, visibly nervous. "Your Majesty, the council has assembled." Serafina straightened. Her royal composure returned, but something behind her eyes had changed. "Tell them I am coming." The attendant bowed and left. Michael turned toward her. "Are you sure you want me there?" Serafina looked directly at him. "You were the reason I looked at the law." She opened the door. "Now I want them to hear what the law actually says." Michael followed her into the corridor. Behind them, the ancient record continued glowing in the empty chamber. For 600 years, nobody had changed the words. They had only changed what the words were allowed to mean. The Hall of Oaths had been silent for 6 centuries, and Michael Carter could hear every mechanical pulse beneath its stone floor as he stood beside the Alien Empress. Pale gold circuitry traced the walls like veins beneath glass, while the 9 empty council seats waited in perfect darkness. Serafina walked to the center table, her silver robes whispering across the polished surface. Michael followed, careful to keep several feet between them. "They will try to make you look disloyal," she said. They already think I am. They think you are dangerous. Michael glanced at her. Because I asked a question? Because you asked it where everyone could hear. She activated the central pillar. The ancient record returned, its soft light painting both their faces. The council will claim the ritual has always meant submission. Michael studied the old inscription. And you know that is not true. I know now. Her voice carried something quieter than anger. Regret. Michael noticed it immediately. You were taught differently. Serafina looked at the record. I was taught to trust the people who taught me. That is not the same as trusting the truth. She looked at him. For a moment, neither spoke. Then the chamber doors opened. 9 counselors entered in ceremonial robes, followed by a line of royal attendants. Chancellor Adrian Voss walked at the center, his silver collar catching the light. Michael recognized the expression on his face. Polite certainty. The kind people wore when they believed the outcome had already been decided. Your Imperial Majesty, Voss said, bowing. The council is prepared. Serafina returned to her position at the center of the chamber. Then present your case. Voss turned toward Michael. The human has refused an established imperial command. Michael remained silent. He has challenged the authority of the throne. Still silent. And he has encouraged disrespect toward the customs that have held this empire together for generations. Serafina's golden eyes narrowed. Have you finished? Voss paused. Almost. He produced a thin crystal tablet. The council requests that Michael Carter demonstrate his allegiance by completing the traditional kneeling ritual before this hearing proceeds. Michael looked at Serafina. She did not tell him what to do. That mattered. He turned back toward Voss. What happens if I refuse? The hearing will continue without your protection under imperial diplomatic law. Michael considered the words. So the ritual is voluntary. Voss's expression tightened. Do not twist language. I am not twisting anything. Michael pointed toward the tablet. You just said the hearing continues if I refuse. That means the act is not required. One counselor shifted in his seat. Another looked down at the floor. Serafina noticed. So did Michael. Voss recovered. You are being deliberately difficult. No, Michael's voice remained even. I am being precise. The ancient pillar suddenly chimed. Everyone turned. A new line of text appeared above the table. Historical ritual definition requested. Voss went pale. Deactivate the archive. Serafina looked at him. Why? Because this is irrelevant. Michael looked at the glowing inscription. Then why are you afraid of it? The chamber became still. The system continued. Original oath protocol available. Serafina stepped closer. Display it. Voss moved forward. Your Majesty, I strongly advise against. Display it. The ancient pillar brightened. A record appeared from 600 years earlier. An empress stood in the same chamber, surrounded by the founders of the imperial court. Her voice filled the room. No knee shall be taken by command. No allegiance shall be recognized through coercion. The act has meaning only when freely given. The recording ended. Nobody spoke. Michael looked at Voss. That seems fairly clear. Voss's jaw tightened. Ancient wording cannot govern modern law. Serafina answered before Michael could. Then why did you invoke an ancient ritual to judge him? Voss stopped. The question hung in the air. One of the counselors slowly stood. Chancellor, perhaps we should review the statute. Voss turned toward him. Sit down. The counselor did not. Another rose. Then another. Michael watched the room change one person at a time. It was not dramatic. No shouting. No threats. Just chairs moving across stone. People standing because they had finally been given permission to question what everyone had accepted. Serafina looked toward Michael. Her expression held the faintest trace of amusement. You have caused quite a disturbance. Michael gave a small shrug. I only refused to kneel. That, she said quietly, may have been the most useful thing anyone has done in this court for a very long time. Then the central pillar chimed again. A new message appeared. Emergency Imperial Review requested. Authority. High Council. Michael's expression changed. That is not good. Serafina looked at the message. Why? Because they just lost the argument. He pointed at the display. And now they are changing the rules. The chamber doors closed behind them with a heavy mechanical seal. The council had not ended the hearing. It had only moved it to a level where the old law might no longer be enough. By the time the palace doors opened again, Michael Carter understood one thing. The kneeling ritual had never been about respect. It had been about control. The Hall of Oaths still hummed behind him. its ancient machinery cycling beneath 600 years of stone and ceremony. Ahead, the imperial court waited beneath a ceiling of blue crystal, every polished surface reflecting the same cold light. Empress Seraphina walked beside him, her silver robes whispering across the floor. She did not look at the counselors. She looked straight ahead. Michael noticed the change in her posture. She was no longer entering the chamber as someone defending a human. She was entering as someone questioning the people who had ruled beside her for years. "You are quiet," she said. "I am thinking. About the council? About how long they have been doing this." Seraphina slowed. "You believe they have manipulated the ritual for generations. I believe someone taught you the wrong version of your own law." Her golden eyes shifted toward him. "That is a dangerous accusation. Then it is fortunate I am not making it publicly." A faint smile appeared. "Not yet." They reached the center of the throne hall. The 9 counselors were already waiting. Chancellor Adrian Voss stood in front, holding a thin crystal tablet. "Your Majesty," he said, "the High Council has reviewed the matter." Seraphina stopped several yards away. "And what has it decided?" "That the humans' refusal constitutes deliberate disrespect." Michael heard a soft murmur move through the nobles. He did not answer. Voss continued. "The council therefore recommends immediate removal of his diplomatic protection." Seraphina's expression remained calm. "On what statute?" Voss lifted the tablet. "Imperial tradition." Michael almost laughed. "That is not a statute." Every eye moved toward him. Seraphina did not silence him. "Explain yourself," Voss said. "Gladly." Michael stepped forward. "A tradition describes what people do. A statute describes what they are required to do. You keep using the first word as if it were the second." One counselor shifted uncomfortably. Voss's voice sharpened. "You presume to lecture the imperial court?" "No. I am asking you to be precise." Seraphina looked at Voss. "He has a point." The chancellor turned toward her. "Your Majesty, you cannot allow a foreign human to undermine centuries of imperial authority." "I am not allowing him to do anything," she replied. "I am listening." That sentence landed harder than any accusation. Michael saw it in the court's faces. The Empress had changed the rules without raising her voice. Voss took a breath. "Then let us make the matter simple. If the human will not kneel, the court will determine whether he may remain." Seraphina's eyes narrowed. "You are still treating a voluntary ritual as a legal requirement." "Because that is how it has always been done." Michael looked at the 9 counselors. "There it is." Voss frowned. "What?" "The reason this works." Michael pointed toward the ancient insignia above the throne. "Everyone keeps saying the same thing. That is how it has always been done. Nobody asks who changed it first." The hall fell silent. Seraphina turned toward the central display. "Activate the oldest accessible record." A royal attendant hesitated. Voss immediately objected. "Your Majesty, that archive is not part of this hearing." "Then why are you afraid of it?" Seraphina asked. Voss said nothing. The display activated. Ancient records unfolded across the chamber like layers of pale gold glass. Dates appeared. Names. Royal decrees. Ritual revisions. Michael watched the sequence scroll backward through generations. Then one entry stopped the system. Original oath protocol altered. Authority. High Council. Date. 417 years ago. The court reacted at once. A few nobles whispered. One counselor stood. "That cannot be correct." Michael looked at the record. "The system says it is." Voss stepped toward the display. "This is a technical error." Seraphina turned slowly toward him. "Then explain why the authorization bears your office." Voss stared at the record. "My office did not exist 400 years ago." Michael studied the data. "No, but the title did." Seraphina's expression became still. The old record expanded. Beneath the authorization was another line. Succession control protocol enabled. Michael felt the atmosphere change. This was bigger than a ritual. The council had not merely changed the meaning of kneeling. They had changed it to create a mechanism of obedience. Seraphina looked at Michael. "You were right." He shook his head. "Not yet." "What do you mean?" He pointed to the bottom of the record. "There is another authorization." The display enlarged it. A second name appeared. Not a counselor. Not a noble. A royal title. The Empress looked at it, and all the color seemed to leave her face. "That," she whispered, "is my bloodline." Then the palace lights went dark. The palace lights returned one section at a time, but the throne hall no longer felt like the same place. The blue crystal ceiling glowed weakly above Michael Carter and Empress Seraphina, while the ancient display remained frozen on the final record. The name beneath the authorization belonged to Seraphina's royal bloodline. Nobody spoke. Even the mechanical hum beneath the floor seemed quieter. Seraphina stared at the inscription. That cannot be my family. Michael kept his eyes on the display. It can be. She looked at him. You sound certain. I am certain about the record. I am not certain about what it means. That distinction mattered. Michael had learned long ago that data could tell the truth while people told stories around it. Seraphina stepped closer to the display. Her golden eyes moved across the ancient characters. My ancestor was Empress Althea Vera. The record says her office authorized the change. She ruled 400 years ago. Exactly. Seraphina's fingers rested lightly against the edge of the crystal table. Why would an empress change the ritual? Michael looked toward the council. Adrian Voss was silent now. His confidence had disappeared with the lights. Maybe she did not, Michael said. Maybe someone used her authority. Seraphina turned toward him. Then why does the system recognize it as legitimate? Because whoever changed the protocol knew how the system worked. Michael stepped toward the display. And because the change was approved by someone with access to the royal authority system. A noblewoman near the front spoke quietly. The royal family has always controlled that system. Michael looked at her. That is what makes this interesting. She frowned. Why? Because the record does not say royal authority. It says succession control protocol. Seraphina's expression tightened. Explain. Michael pointed toward the glowing text. A succession control protocol would not exist to manage a ceremony. It would exist to manage who is considered loyal enough to influence succession. The court became uneasy. Several nobles looked at one another. Seraphina understood first. The kneeling ritual. Michael nodded. Anyone who performs it under the altered protocol could be classified as voluntarily aligned with the authority that controls the ceremony. Voss finally spoke. That is speculation. Yes, Michael answered. Until we check the records. Seraphina looked at the palace attendant. Bring every historical version of the oath protocol. The attendant hesitated. Voss immediately stepped forward. Your Majesty, that archive is restricted. Seraphina turned toward him. By whom? Voss stopped. By imperial security. Whose security? The crown's. Then as crown, I am ordering access. The attendant bowed and moved toward the archive console. Michael watched the council carefully. One counselor stood and quietly stepped away from the others. Another reached for a private communication device, then stopped when Seraphina noticed. The Empress said nothing. She simply watched. A moment later, the central display filled with centuries of records. One version followed another. The original wording remained consistent for generations. Then, 417 years earlier, a revised protocol appeared. Michael leaned closer. The language had changed by only a few words. That was the dangerous part. There, he said. Seraphina read the revision. Her expression became distant. The word voluntary was removed. Michael nodded, and replaced with required. A quiet breath moved through the court. Who approved it? Seraphina asked. The system searched. A new record appeared. Authorized by Imperial Succession Office. Michael looked at Voss. Who held that office? Voss did not answer. Seraphina did. No one outside the royal family. Michael looked back at the display. Then someone inside the royal family helped them. The words settled over the chamber. Seraphina did not deny them. Instead, she looked at the ancient record again. If this is true, then my family did not merely inherit the tradition. Michael waited. They inherited the consequences of it. She turned toward him. And now the council wants you to kneel because they need the old system to remain unquestioned. Michael gave a slow nod. That is what it looks like. Seraphina looked across the court. Her voice remained calm. Then we will ask one more question. Voss swallowed. What question? She looked directly at him. Who benefits when everyone believes obedience is the same thing as loyalty? Nobody answered. The ancient display suddenly produced another record. Access request denied. Authority override required. Michael looked at Seraphina. They locked the archive. The Empress's golden eyes hardened with quiet determination. Then we find another way in. The archive doors were never meant to open without royal authority, but the palace had forgotten that authority could belong to more than one person. Seraphina stood before the sealed console, her sapphire skin illuminated by the pale gold symbols moving across its surface. Michael Carter stood beside her, studying the system response. Access request denied. Authority override required. Can you override it? Serafina asked. Not from here. Then where? Michael looked toward the floor. The original control room. Her expression changed. There is no original control room. Every system has one. Not this palace. Every system has one. He pointed toward the wall. The archive was built 400 years ago. The control architecture would have been designed before the current palace network existed. Serafina followed his gaze. You think it is beneath us? I think the palace is hiding something. They walked through a narrow corridor behind the archive chamber. The walls became older with every step. Crystal gave way to dark stone. Modern lighting disappeared, replaced by small amber panels that activated as they passed. Michael moved slowly, reading the faded symbols along the walls. Serafina remained close behind him. You have done this before, she said. Found hidden systems? On Earth, old buildings have maintenance tunnels. And you explored them? Usually because somebody forgot to label them. She almost smiled. You are remarkably calm for someone walking beneath an imperial palace. Michael glanced back. I have worked inside worse wiring. At the end of the passage, they found a circular door without a handle. In its center was an ancient emblem. Serafina placed her hand against it. Nothing happened. Michael looked at the emblem. It is not recognizing you. I am the Empress. I know. He studied the pattern again. But that is not what it is asking. He noticed 3 symbols arranged beneath the emblem. One represented the crown. One represented the council. The third was unfamiliar. What does that symbol mean? Serafina asked. Michael traced it with his eyes. Consent. She looked at him. Consent. That is what it means in old human systems. This is not a human system. The concept still makes sense. He placed his hand beside hers. The door remained dark. Maybe it needs both. Serafina hesitated. Then she placed her palm firmly against the symbol. Michael did the same. The door opened. Warm air moved through the passage. Inside was a small circular chamber filled with dormant equipment. No throne. No ceremonial markings. Just an ancient control console surrounded by transparent panels. Michael stepped closer. There. A single terminal was still active. Serafina looked at the display. Can you access it? Maybe. He connected the portable interface from his belt. The terminal accepted the connection immediately. A list of historical protocols appeared. Michael scrolled through them. Then he stopped. Found something. Serafina moved beside him. What is it? The succession control protocol was not created to enforce obedience. Then why was it created? Michael opened the original file. A statement appeared across the screen. Succession protocol exists to prevent coercive transfer of imperial authority. Serafina stared at the words. Michael continued reading. It was designed to protect the Empress from forced succession. Her expression became still. Then someone reversed it. Michael nodded. They changed the protocol so the person who controls the ritual could define who was loyal. Serafina looked toward the dark chamber around them. That means the council did not create the system. No, they hijacked it. Exactly. Another file opened automatically. Authority override history. Michael's eyes moved across the list. Hundreds of entries appeared. Each one recorded a royal decision overridden by council authority. Then he saw the most recent entry. It had been created only 3 days earlier. Authority override request. Empress Serafina Vera. Status. Pending. Michael went still. Serafina. She looked at him. What? He turned the screen toward her. They are not trying to remove me. Her golden eyes followed the text. They are trying to remove you. Michael nodded slowly. And they are using me as the reason. The terminal chimed again. A final message appeared. Imperial succession review will begin at dawn. Serafina looked toward the narrow passage leading back to the court. Then we have until dawn. Michael closed the interface. No, she looked at him. How long do we have? Michael glanced at the clock embedded in the old console. About 40 minutes. For the first time that night, the Empress smiled without amusement. Then we had better stop wasting time. The old control room felt smaller after Michael Carter said the words aloud. 40 minutes. That was all they had before the Imperial succession review began. Serafina stood beside the ancient console, staring at the record that had changed everything. Her name remained on the screen. Authority override request. Empress Serafina Vera. Status, pending. Can they activate it without me? She asked. Michael studied the data. Not completely. What does that mean? They can begin the review, but they cannot finalize the transfer of authority unless the succession system recognizes a valid consent event. Serafina looked at him. And what counts as consent? Michael pointed toward the old symbol they had seen on the door. That. Her expression tightened. The same symbol that opened this chamber. Yes. Then the council needs me to consent. Or they need the system to believe you did. The silence between them felt heavier than the machinery around them. Serafina stepped closer to the console. How? Michael opened the override history. By using the altered kneeling protocol. She understood immediately. If I command you to kneel, and you do, the system could interpret it as voluntary allegiance. Exactly. And that would validate the council's succession claim. If the old protocol has been replaced, yes. Serafina looked at the floor. Then your refusal in the throne hall prevented the process from starting. Michael nodded. You did not refuse because you were stubborn. No, you refused because you did not know. Michael looked at her. Neither did you. Her eyes met his. That is the part one disliked most. Which part? That I almost helped them. Michael did not answer immediately. He knew better than to offer comfort that had not been earned. Serafina turned back to the console. Can we restore the original protocol? Maybe. Maybe. The system has two authorization paths. One is royal. The other requires an independent witness. She looked at him. A witness from outside the empire. Michael pointed to the screen. That is why the original system recognizes protected diplomats. Serafina's expression changed. You. Apparently. A faint mechanical tone sounded. The system displayed a new request. Independent witness required. Identity, Michael Carter. What happens if I accept, he asked. You become part of the succession record. And if I refuse? The review proceeds without you. Michael considered the choice. Then I accept. Serafina looked at him sharply. You understand what that means? It means I have to tell the truth. Even if that truth damages the throne. Especially then. She studied him for several seconds. You are very difficult to command. Michael gave a small smile. You already noticed. The console brightened. A transparent panel appeared between them. Two spaces waited beneath the ancient consent symbol. Serafina placed her hand against one. Michael placed his against the other. The system remained silent. Then a message appeared. Consent must be freely given. Serafina looked at Michael. Do you consent? To witness the truth, yes. Not to serve the crown? Not unless I choose to. Her eyes softened. Good. She touched the panel again. I consent to an independent review of my authority. The system chimed. Authority protected. Original succession protocol restored. Michael exhaled. That was easier than expected. Serafina shook her head. No, it was only the first door. The palace clock sounded through the walls. 30 minutes remained. Then another message appeared. Review location, Imperial Throne Hall. Presiding authority, High Council. Serafina looked toward the passage. They will expect me to arrive alone. Michael disconnected his interface. Then they are about to be disappointed. She raised an eyebrow. You intend to accompany me? I am the independent witness. They will object. They objected when I stood. Serafina smiled faintly. And yet you are still standing. Together they left the ancient chamber. Behind them, the original protocol remained active for the first time in 4 centuries. The palace lights changed from cold blue to warm gold as they entered the main corridor. Ahead, the throne hall doors were already opening. The entire court had gathered. Every noble was watching the Empress. Every counselor was waiting for her to enter alone. Instead, Michael Carter walked beside her. And for the first time, nobody told him to kneel. The throne hall doors opened, and every conversation stopped. Michael Carter walked beside Empress Serafina Vera beneath the vast crystalline arch, his dark uniform almost plain against the silver and blue of the imperial court. The nobles watched him with open disbelief. He was still standing. More importantly, the Empress had chosen to let him stand beside her. Chancellor Adrian Voss waited at the center of the chamber with the 9 counselors behind him. A large golden display floated above the central platform, showing the succession review countdown. 22 minutes remained. Voss bowed. Your Majesty, the council is prepared to proceed. Serafina stopped before the throne. Then proceed. Voss looked at Michael. The independent witness is not required to remain in the chamber. Michael answered before Serafina could. The system disagrees. A quiet murmur passed through the court. Voss's expression tightened. You are not authorized to interpret imperial procedure. I am not interpreting it. Michael pointed toward the display. I am reading it. The ancient system responded immediately. Independent witness present. Original succession protocol active. The golden letters appeared above the throne for everyone to see. Several nobles stepped closer. Serafina remained calm. Begin the review. Voss touched his crystal tablet. The council requests that Her Imperial Majesty confirm her voluntary allegiance to the throne. Michael looked at Serafina. She did not move. How? She asked. Voss hesitated. Through the traditional kneeling ceremony. The chamber became completely silent. Michael felt the meaning of the moment settle around him. This was the trap. They wanted the old ritual back. They wanted the Empress to perform the same act they had demanded from him. Serafina looked toward the central display. System, identify the governing protocol. The palace answered in a calm mechanical voice. Original succession protocol. Voss stepped forward. Your Majesty, the council has already established the proper procedure. The council does not establish imperial law, Serafina replied. It interprets it, and the interpretation has stood for generations. Michael spoke quietly. That does not make it correct. Voss turned toward him. You have had enough influence already. Michael remained still. Then you should have stopped asking me questions. Several nobles lowered their eyes, hiding faint smiles. Serafina almost smiled herself. Instead, she raised her hand. System, display the original definition of voluntary allegiance. The air above the throne changed. A new record appeared. No person may be required to kneel as proof of loyalty. No empress may be required to kneel as proof of authority. The court reacted with a collective breath. Voss looked toward the council. That record is obsolete. Serafina turned toward him. Then why does the imperial system still recognize it? He had no answer. Michael studied the display. There is another line. Serafina looked up. The text expanded. Any succession transfer initiated through coerced allegiance shall be invalid. The hall became silent again. Voss's face changed. Michael understood immediately. That is what they needed. Serafina looked at him. What? They needed you to kneel voluntarily. He pointed toward the ancient system. Not because the ritual gives them authority. Because your voluntary act would make the transfer appear legitimate. One counselor suddenly stepped forward. That is impossible. Michael looked at him. Then asked the system. The counselor did. The display answered. Succession transfer invalid without voluntary allegiance. The counselor slowly stepped back. Serafina looked across the room. For 400 years, you have told every ruler that kneeling was required. No one answered. You told them it was tradition. Silence. You told them it was loyalty. Silence. But it was never law. Her voice remained quiet, and somehow that made every word carry farther. Voss finally spoke. Your Majesty, you are misunderstanding the purpose of the council. Serafina looked at him. No, Chancellor. I understand it now. She stepped away from the throne. Michael remained beside her. The council was supposed to advise the crown. She looked at the 9 counselors. Some of you decided it would be easier to control the crown instead. The words hung beneath the crystal ceiling. Then the ancient system chimed. Review status. Imperial authority secure. Succession transfer. Rejected. Michael looked at Serafina. She gave the smallest nod. The council had lost its advantage. But Voss was still holding his tablet. He looked down at it and smiled faintly. You have secured the throne, he said. For now. Serafina's expression did not change. What does that mean? Voss raised the tablet. The final authority does not belong to the council. The palace lights shifted to deep gold. A new symbol appeared above the throne. High Imperial Review activated. Michael looked at the symbol. That is new. Serafina stared at it. No. Her voice became very quiet. It is very old. The doors behind the court closed by themselves. And somewhere beneath the palace, another ancient system awakened. The ancient system awakened beneath the throne hall with a sound so low that Michael Carter felt it more than heard it. The crystal floor vibrated gently beneath his boots. Above the throne, the symbol of High Imperial Review rotated in slow golden circles, casting warm light across the faces of the court. Empress Serafina remained still. Chancellor Adrian Voss did not. Your Majesty, he said carefully, You should not activate a system whose authority predates the current imperial charter. Serafina looked at him. Why? Voss hesitated. Because the High Imperial Review does not answer to the throne. Michael glanced toward the ceiling. Then who does it answer to? Voss did not reply. The ancient system answered for him. High Imperial Review recognizes no permanent authority. A quiet breath moved through the court. Serafina stepped forward. Identify the purpose of the review. To determine whether imperial authority remains freely held. Michael felt the meaning of the words settle into place. This was not another political hearing. It was an ancient safeguard designed for the moment when a ruler could no longer tell whether the throne belonged to her or to the people controlling the throne around her. Serafina looked at Michael. What does it need? The system responded. A ruler. An independent witness. A question freely asked. Michael frowned slightly. Only that. And an answer freely given. Voss stepped forward. Your Majesty, this procedure has not been used in 400 years. Serafina did not look away from the display. Then perhaps it is time. She placed her hand beneath the golden symbol. The system illuminated her palm. State your question. Serafina took a slow breath. Then she turned toward the entire court. Do I still possess the authority to rule this empire by my own choice? The room became silent. Michael watched the system process her words. Question accepted. A second light appeared beside her. Michael understood what it meant. Independent witness required. He stepped forward and placed his hand beneath the second light. The system scanned him. Identity confirmed. Michael Carter. Human representative. External jurisdiction. Voss looked unsettled. He cannot participate. Serafina answered calmly. The system says otherwise. He is an outsider. Michael looked at the Chancellor. That is why I qualify. Voss turned toward the council. This is absurd. One counselor quietly shook his head. No, it is old. Another looked toward the ancient display. And it is still active. Serafina returned her attention to Michael. You heard my question. I did. Then answer when the system asks. The ancient chamber chimed. Independent witness. Do you recognize the ruler before you as acting by free choice? Michael looked at Serafina. For the first time since he had entered the palace, she looked uncertain. Not frightened. Not weak. Simply human in a way he had not expected from an empress. He answered carefully. I recognize that she is choosing to remain. The system paused. Clarify. Michael continued. She could surrender authority. She could obey the council. She could leave this throne. She is not. She is standing here because she chooses to. Serafina's golden eyes softened. The system chimed again. Witness statement accepted. Voss stepped forward. That proves nothing. Michael turned toward him. It proves the one thing your entire argument ignored. Voss frowned. What? Choice. The word echoed through the hall. Serafina looked at the court. 4 generations, you taught people that kneeling proved loyalty. She glanced at Michael. But this human showed us something else. She removed the imperial seal from her robe and placed it on the table. A gesture has meaning only when the person making it is free to refuse. The system brightened. Imperial authority confirmed. The golden symbol above the throne dissolved into thousands of small lights. Coercive succession invalidated. Voss lowered his tablet. Then what happens to the council? Serafina answered without anger. It returns to its purpose. She looked across the 9 seats. Advice, not control. One by one, the counselors lowered their heads. Not because they had been ordered to, because they understood. Michael remained beside the Empress. Serafina looked at him. You never did kneel. Michael gave a quiet smile. You never gave me a reason. She looked toward the throne, then back at him. I think I finally understand. The great hall grew quiet as dawn light entered through the crystal windows. No one commanded Michael to bow. No one demanded Serafina prove her worth. For the first time in generations, the court simply stood together without pretending that obedience was the same as respect. Michael looked at the morning sky reflected across the polished floor. Serafina stood beside him, not above him. And somewhere beneath the ancient palace, the oldest system in the empire recorded one final sentence. Authority remains where choice remains. Neither of them spoke. They did not need to. Some truths are strongest when the whole court is finally silent enough to hear them.